What is up? We are back. Been since 2018 since I filmed the last actual YouTube video. Excited to get back at it, working on projects, and yeah, let's get it rolling. Today I'm going to be focusing on the wife's S13 coupe. It's been sitting for 6 years. Recently replaced the motor, which was actually my motor for the 180SX, but we discovered some valve damage on the original motor when we pulled it out, trying to get it to start, originally thinking that it was a harness when it wasn't, unfortunately, but it is now running. So now it's just buttoning up the small parts, replacing the suspension components. I've replaced inner tie rod ends, outer tie rod ends, axles bad in need of replacement, the ball joints themselves just completely destroyed. Got all the old ones pressed out, new ones pressed in. Without further ado, this is the coupe. All right, let's make some room underneath it so we can get to work. We've replaced inner tie rod ends, outer tie rod ends. Got to cut these inner tie rod ends down. Replace the sway bar end links. It's got new bushings for the front and for the back, instead of those old cracked ones. I'm going to throw on the axles, get the rest of the rear suspension set up and eyeballed, so then we can go get an alignment. And also be swapping out these larger 245/40s. So bigger sidewall makes the car sit a little bit too high for our taste. I'm going to put on some spare scrubs, some 255/35s that I've got lying around in the stack. This car is also converted to Z32 5-lug hubs, which there's a small issue in doing that on the back because you run into these e-brake cables don't work from the original Z32 e-brake cables. So I'm gonna have to replace those, which I've done here already. GK Tech sells a kit which actually made up to this plate that they have, which then will connect to the stock front up here. So pretty excited for that. She'll have a working e-brake. Hopefully we can get it tight enough without actually having to replace these inner shoes, as they are super worn down. The new axles here, you can see that on S13, one is shorter, one is longer. If you look at the actual diff itself, you can see that here's the center line. This side much longer, so it would hence take the shorter axle. This side much shorter from here to here, so it's going to take the longer axle. S13s use a 2-bolt setup. It's a little bit weaker as the bolts are very small. For the amount of power that this car is going to be putting out, the amount of torque, I don't think it's anything we need to worry about upgrading just at this time. Got the axles in place. Let's go ahead and put on the hubs and we'll start assembling. So I got the hubs on, not everything completely snugged down yet, but bolted together, all the arms together. These eccentric lockouts from GK Tech are amazing when you have adjustable arms. It basically removes your eccentric, so your factory alignment setting, you'd be able to turn this, it would have sort of a crescent on it, and it would actually move and adjust your suspension for your rear toe, and also up here for your rear camber. These lockouts, you just Loctite them, run them in, torque them down, and then basically, because it's a full-size washer all the way around with no changes, even if it does happen to spin later, it's not going to mess up your alignment, where you can do your full alignment based on your adjustable arms. If you've ever heard someone, even on a normal everyday car, put the vehicle in drive, they get like a click before they take off. 9 times out of 10, that's going to be the actual axle nut itself, just allowing it to axle nut to move. It hits the splines, they click. So I always lubricate the splines a little bit with a little bit of grease, and then the washer itself. Every time I install an axle, try to make sure I don't get the actual threads of the splines itself, because that can affect the torque. But just so this surface here and the back washer surface and then the back of the washer on the actual hub itself do get a little bit of a coating in grease. Makes all the difference in the world for that noise. It also helps with wear. So quick little tip. All right, time to cut down these inner tie rods. So essentially what I did was I gave the wheels, it's hard to see on the camera, but actually just a little bit of toe out on both sides. Made sure my steering rack is completely centered, and then basically brought them up to where they're even, taped that section off, and then that way I know exactly where to cut. So this will be my maximum toe out that I'll be able to run on the car, but still have the most amount of thread engagement. So that way whenever I adjust them for toe in, it'll leave me a little bit of blank space within this little adapter here, but still have plenty of engagement on the inside and the outside of that adapter. All right, so after cutting them off, I took a grinder to the very end of them just to kind of shape them up and make sure there's no big burrs or anything. So that way the new pieces for the inner tie rods will thread right on, nice and even. Looks pretty good. Beautiful. All right, so small change of plans. Originally wanted to do 255s on the wheels for the coupe because the 245/40s sidewall's a little bit too thick. However, started digging through my scraps, my takeoffs, big mess over here. Basically wasn't able to find a pair that I think would be good, that would work. I've got some R compounds up top, some Hankooks, but those I think would just be a little bit too grippy for the car. I want to eventually fool around with it a little bit, do a little bit of drifting. I had a decent amount of 225/40s. So I'm gonna put on two 225/40/18s, see how they fit, see if they need much adjustment. I wanna run as close to zero camber in the back as possible. Everything's mounted and balanced. Let's go ahead and put it on. Oh, don't forget your hub ring. If you don't know what this is, make sure you research. Very important to prevent vibrations, and it's also easier on the studs. So hub ring in for what fits, and we'll get it on there. Alrighty, wheels are bolted on. I've got the toe and camber pretty even from how it's going to sit. Whenever I get the car, of course, on the ground, take it to the alignment rack, I'll be able to fine tune that. Side skirts are back on, rear bumper's back on, drive shaft is back on. It's almost there. I've got to do some headlight work on it tomorrow, make some brackets. And then of course, it'll need a deep clean. We're gonna pull the carpet out of it and really make it all nice and stuff on the interior. It is getting there. Can't wait. Woo! Well, that is all for this one. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If you don't mind, drop a like. Subscribe would be tremendous if you would. And remember, friends don't let friends drive automatics with both feet.